Thanks, Patrick. Good morning, good afternoon now. Happy to be here to talk about living your Catholic faith in big enterprises. I know this is a group primarily of business owners, but I think that this talk will help enlighten why some of the undercurrents that happen in our society as a result of companies like Comcast. They're driving the culture, they're driving the change, but we're all impacted in many ways. And I'm just one small pawn in a bigger environment, a bigger corporate culture. So what can I actually do to kind of turn the tide at my current company and bring that faith to our society and our corporations? So a little bit about me. I've been at Comcast for approximately just under 10 years. Spent most of my career here. I kind of lined this up along with my faith journey. So I'm a cradle Catholic. I received my sacraments of initiation as a kid, and all Novus Ordo. We didn't find the Latin Mass until later on in life. But I was kind of your stereotypical Catholic. I think I went to Catholic school, Catholic high school. Fell away from the faith for a decent number of years through college. Was working on my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Did fairly well in academically. I did return to the Catholic Church with the Catholic Student Union at Florida State University. So we're originally from Florida. We lived there for about 26 years. So most of our adult and child life. So during that time, I had this kind of renewal in my faith and was really striving toward understanding God and really I just had a fire lit into me. At the same time, I lost my first job out of college. That was a very difficult time for me. I think I was pretty ambitious, but I don't think I did very well in mechanical engineering. Was able to get a job with Comcast through a network connection with my parents. And ever since I've been there for my pretty much the length of my career. I decided I wasn't going to let that happen anymore in terms of losing my job, and I was pretty motivated to make this job work. So I pursued a master's in business administration. Comcast was going to pay for it, so I finished that in 3 years. During that time, I had met my wife and was going to St. Bonaventure in South Florida. Tasha was a convert to the faith, so I was a sponsor for her in RCIA. As she was going through that, we got married. I was still pursuing my MBA at the time. When I graduated, I found a job out here in Denver, 2018. I was able to transfer over as a Tech 3 in planning and design. So what is planning and design? Planning and design is, basically your fiber network at Comcast. So if you look down the street, you see cable, you see coax cable, you see your fiber backbone. That's what we do. We design it on our GIS platform. And we outsource some of it. We do some of it in-house. I currently manage teams that do that. I took a step away from planning and design, went into project management, went over to Comcast Business, was getting certified. Kept getting promoted in the ladder of Comcast. Became a senior project manager through top performance and continuing to getting certified. So that's kind of my journey in terms of my career. Came back over to planning and design as a manager just recently, back in July. And kind of throughout that faith period, my wife and I had been having kids. So we have our 4 beautiful kids there, Abigail, Angie, Amy, and Christopher. We've been attending Our Lady of Loretto for the majority of our time here. During the pandemic, I had found actually the Carmelite Monastery. Dr. Anselmi is our doctor, so he said, "Hey, here, come to the Latin Mass." So I came to the Latin Mass. So that was really my first full immersion of weekly Latin Mass. I don't know if you know who Father Nick Larkin is as well. We at Our Lady of Loretto, but he's the first person that introduced the Latin Mass to us through the young adults group. So that's where I'm like, where is this, right? And then he said, yeah, we do it at the Carmelite Monastery. But it wasn't until Dr. Anselmi handed me a bulletin that I actually started going regularly to the Carmelite Monastery. 2 years after doing that, we came as a family. So now our family attends here regularly, and we will, we're still a part of the Our Lady of Loretto Parish. We still help in the marriage ministry there. We do cross-pollinate to bring some of the things we learn here and bring it to to our other Catholic brethren there. So that's been a big blessing. We like to be immersed in the community, so that's a big part of what we do. But we do attend Mass here primarily. So that's just a little history of me, kind of lining up the faith with my career. With Comcast, it's just, the thing with a big corporation, you get benefits, you get, there's endless opportunities with your salary, stock, those types of things. That's kind of like the draw to be a provider in your family. So that's been a draw for me to continue growing and to be able to give my family sustainability. Okay, so what are we talking about today? I kind of want to give you my experience of what I've learned and how I've adapted in the corporate environment, a very large corporate environment. So I'll go through some of the common issues of faith that I've seen in the workplace, where our culture is today in terms of our corporations. I bring in some resources from Bishop Snyder and a few other key speakers on spiritual works of mercy, how to love, opportunities to live out your faith. I'll go into certain times when it makes sense to stand up for your faith and admonish and instruct versus bearing those wrongs patiently when it may not be the right time or opportunity to do so, to where standing up for your faith may not be the best decision. And then what are the strategies behind it? What are the kind of the three things you can look for in making kind of that prudent decision? And then I just touch on the law surrounding religious freedom, and then some concluding thoughts. So common things you see in our corporate culture today, DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. You see a lot of issues against life, common discussions around with your colleagues and your boss. Slander, gossip, lots of that goes on, during work hours and after work hours. So how do you deal with those things? As a husband, a father, the breadwinner of the family, those are not very attractive words in our culture today. Legitimate obedience to the corporation, because there's also that. So I think, just discussions with your boss is certainly an opportunity, to talk about your faith, especially when you're first hired, because they want to know a little bit about you, and how can you not talk about your Catholic faith? So it really is an opportunity, because your boss hired you to do a job. They want to know who you are. So you can talk about your Mass attendance, specifically on holy days, because that actually might be something you need to talk to them about, if you're trying to take time off for work. And then you can talk about the ministries you're involved in, like if you're involved in the, teaching the baptism class, or if you're helping out with marriage. Those are opportunities for evangelization. And you can tell a little bit more about yourself. And then if they're intrigued, then you can talk a bit more. You can expand that reach and talk more specific about things in the faith. So those are opportunities you can talk about with your boss specifically. Colleagues, I do that a lot in kind of the office environment. If you're virtual, it becomes a bit difficult. You're kind of separated, right? So being in the office definitely helps facilitate evangelization in that regard. When it comes down to like gossip and slander, you can be a part of the conversation in some ways by listening, but you don't want to give any kind of approbation to what they're saying. So you may want to change the subject, things like that. We live in such a culture where living out your faith may be challenging, or it may be sinful in some ways. If not sinful, I mean if you're living in a culture, in a corporate environment that it itself is driving a very sinful culture, but that doesn't mean you can't live out your faith in this environment. So you have nurses that may be part of a hospital that promotes abortion or is doing abortions, in that same facility. But if that's the case, you might want to go find a new hospital. But if you can't do that, you can still live out your faith by aiding the people and showing those virtues, if you're just caring for the sick or in the NICU or whatever it might be. Comcast owns MSNBC. They consistently attack the foundational principles of the Catholic Church. That's kind of where I am at. You have sports teams that promote Pride Day and like the MLB and the NFL and things like that. I mean, but we know a lot of Catholics that are in those sports teams that we admire and we think are a good witness to the Catholic faith. Harrison Butker works for the Kansas City Chiefs, but he's avid fraternity of St. Peter acolyte, I believe, and we find him as a very good person and a good Catholic. Certainly, we don't know everything about his soul, but we know that he does seem to stand up for the Catholic faith in a culture that's very ridden in these types of things. So I think that is a good witness for us. If we are in that situation, we can still live that out and provide that great example of our faith. Okay, so I wanted to touch on a few things that are ingrained in our culture today: industrialism, modernism, and feminism. Industrialism was a key foundational concept in the 19th century. It forced men out of the home. They became commodities for businesses. Pope Leo XIII and John Paul II condemned industrialism due to the priority of capital over labor. Human life, they said, human life and the common good are more valuable than capital. But that was kind of the start of kind of where we are today, I believe. There's probably more to it, but I just wanted to touch on these three things that we know that are currently ingrained. Modernism. We know it's a big problem in the church, but it's also a big problem in our society. So what is modernism? There's really 6 concepts to it. God can't be known by natural reason. There's no such thing as miracles. There's scientific explanations toward it. Jesus didn't found any church. The foundation of the church can change. The dogma is continually evolved. And faith the result of knowledge, and feelings not a result of an external source. So that's really what modernism is in a kind of a conceptual thought. Pope Pius X condemned modernism and created an anti-modernist oath with the clergy that was abolished following Vatican II. But we see a lot of that in our culture today. So in terms of the church and our foundation, but we also see that kind of shifting and changing in our corporations as well. Feminism is an attempt to destroy the differences between man and woman. It's based on a false premise that a woman can achieve greater happiness in life outside of their primary role to husband, children, or the household. This is against the natural and divine law. Father Ripperger explains that feminism directly attacks the spiritual and temporal protection and providence of the family. He says that feminists are clear when they say that their movement is about power. Either the man will be head of the household or his wife will. It's that simple. Once they reject their husband's authority, they become subject to the demonic, since they have stepped outside of the divinely ordered authority. It is for this reason, acting contrary to natural law, that happiness and false feminism are mutually exclusive. It also plays a key role in the rights of fathers to that diminishes within society. Because the modern collapse of men, women have been allowed to take positions which God never intended for them. While true feminism has been distorted, true masculinity has been all but lost in our society. These are critical things to be aware of in our culture. I'm not saying that women shouldn't be in the workplace. There's definitely a circumstances where they should be, and they should be running businesses and everything like that. I'm talking specifically to the men in this room and anyone who might be listening, that we have a greater role in our families, and it's divinely ordained that we need to rebuild our true masculinity so we can rebuild societies. Our societies are becoming very wishy-washy and feminine, and that's a problem. We need strength. We need a solid foundation. So that's where we as men come into play. We need to kind of have that self-sacrifice and fulfill our role as a provider. Father Dwight Longenecker on DE&I. We see a lot of emotional blackmail, subtext, underlying assumptions when we talk about our faith in the workplace. Specific to the Catholic Church, it's an attempt to change our beliefs, or the Church's beliefs in general, so that we can become more anti-Catholic. Evangelization, on the other hand, is a call for those people to repent and turn toward God before it's too late. God wants us to evangelize everywhere, not just in certain circumstances, just not just with the church, in our workplaces as well, everywhere. So we must be prudent in evangelization. However, we also have a calling to provide for our families as well. So there's a balance between evangelization, and I'll talk kind of about that a little bit later in the slides here. The heresy of universalism and semi-universalism, the teaching that everyone is already saved or that everyone can find God through their own spiritual path, the church has condemned that. So we must also condemn that in our life. Many church leaders today tell us not to force people to convert. It means not to evangelize. We should actively try to evangelize as a result of DE&I. The spiritual works of mercy, admonish the sinner, instruct the ignorant, counsel the doubtful, comfort the sorrowful, bear wrongs patiently, forgive all injury, and pray for the living and the dead. Charity is toward Bishop Snyder says charity is toward ourselves and our relatives first. To those bound to us by friendship, gratitude, obedience, country, and religion, including corporations, comes second. To strangers and heretics and unbelievers as third. So that's something to keep in mind when we're making decisions about our faith in the workplace. It's to ourselves, our family, to those we're bound through friendship, our work. So as a second, and then those that are against our faith, to strangers, heretics, and unbelievers. I worked with a man who was in openly gay marriage. He confronted me on homeschooling, and it was an opportunity. I felt like God had put this in front of me to discuss these things with him about the misconceptions about homeschooling, about Catholicism. So he was asking, well, isn't there a lot of abuse with homeschooling? Don't people just take their kids out of school and there's problems with the kids? I'm like, no, this is absolutely not true. My wife, she's here today. She's got her master's degree in special education. She's a very avid homeschooler, and she does a fantastic job. Our kids are at least a grade and a half ahead of the public schoolers in terms of academics, and she also counsels those who may not have a teaching degree or may not know much about teaching, and anyone can really homeschool. So I was kind of explaining to him kind of the dynamics of that. They wonder about socialization. Well, they're never going to be social. I mean, studies show that by the end of homeschooling program, the kids are not only socially aptable, they're more inclined to start businesses, they're ready to start their families, they're really well-adjusted human beings. So this idea that they're not getting socialization is completely unbelievable, because they talk to people of different ages, different grade levels, they talk openly to adults. So I was explaining this to him, and he just has no concept of this. Just absolutely, he reads MSNBC. We're Comcast, right? We own MSNBC, right? So to hear that and have that witness to him, it's very important. And then, well, what about people that don't? What about people that do abuse? What about those types of people? Well, we have laws against abuse, right? And what about you? I mean, what do you do to make sure you're not doing anything wrong? Well, I go to confession once or twice a week. Every other week. So it's forces, and I seek a holy priest. So I told him that I seek a holy priest, and I'm consistently examining my conscience. Totally foreign to him. He never heard anything like this before. So I'm talking openly to a man who is a very very hard worker. And he was interested and I was able to instruct and clarify misconceptions that he had about homeschooling and the Catholic faith at that very moment. So that was, and today I have a great relationship with him, and he doesn't see me as a bad person. He doesn't see me as as beating you over the head with my faith. He sees me as a very hard worker. He sees me as a very faithful person. And it's because of that authenticity with my faith and that opportunity that God's put in front of me that I was able to explain those things to him. So this is an example of kind of using the spiritual works of mercy to your advantage in terms of evangelization, living up to your faith, because I could have been very silent. I could have said a few other things, but I felt like God was putting that position, that situation in my life so that I could provide a good witness to our faith. Bishop Snyder on how to love. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Forgive them from the heart, the wrong which they have done. Help them in their need when we can do so without great inconvenience. Pray for them. Show them the ordinary good that we will show them to others, unless this would result in foreseeable harm or abuse. So I'm going to go through some opportunities to live out your faith, opportunities to stand up for your faith, opportunities to bear your sorrows patiently. So be perfect in all things as your heavenly Father is perfect. This calls us to be excellent at what we do, be very good at our work. Harrison Butker, best kicker in the NFL. We're called to be that. We're called to be that in our work, to be very good, to be that living witness to that, because we have this supernatural grace that many people don't have, and that is a cause for us to be perfect. So get to work early, be the highest performer. Don't take shortcuts, be honest. Find opportunities to share your Catholic faith. And this is really just living out the virtues to the best way you can. And that's also with your family too. Because we can get into this, there's two extremes. There's laziness and then there's workaholic. We can't be either of those. We have to be perfect in our work, but we also have to be perfect in our family too. So we can't let our perfection in work turn into something that's against our family, a witness against our faith, because we're spending too much time at work as well. So we have to know, we have to use those hours that were given to us at work to really drive that nail in the coffin, and then get home and do the same thing with our families. Pray before and between meetings. Hang a traditional calendar or crucifix in your office. Wear the brown scapular. Wear your medals. Bless your office space with holy water. Pray to St. Joseph. Be ready for those faith conversations, including offerings to potentially attend Mass. Be ready to share on Catholic material, pamphlets, rosaries, medals, green scapulars. And again, I'm not saying like every time a colleague talks about your faith, you give them a green scapular. I think you just kind of are human with them. You talk to them and you understand where they are. There could be instances in terms of where you are hitting them over the head, and there could be actually legal problems with that. So that's something you have to be aware of as well. So religious freedom doesn't protect against harassment, and that's something that others could consider as harassment. So you just kind of be aware of that, so that you're not providing a false witness to our faith as well. Times to stand up for your faith. I mentioned 4. There's really a lot of them, but stand up for traditional family structure and the roles of family. Defend marriage. Reject gender ideology. Defend the unborn. What can we do? Companies should aim to amend policies that reject God's law. Employees must participate by living out the joy of God's love in the workplace. Times to bear your wrongs patiently. Avoid sin in general, but and specifically in the foul language. Don't participate in that. Don't presume that someone has sinned without the full knowledge, because you may not know what's going on, and that you don't want to assume that things are sinful. You may know, and then there's a time for correction. But if you don't know, then don't presume that the sin has occurred, or giving any kind of approval towards sin as well. Listen patiently, remove yourself from the situation, or change the topic. Pray and fast for those that are involved. Attempt to guide the conversation to a more neutral topic. Seek confession if you've committed a sin. Seek counsel from a trusted priest. These priests are great with email, so if you need help, email them. Continue your kindness toward others. That's a key part. Be kind Be very kind, because if we're angry, if we're spiteful, that's a counter witness to the faith. When we're kind to them, especially when you're being persecuted, when you know that something has happened, you have to be kind, and it should turn around where they see you as a holy and a good person. So just keep that in mind. Be very kind, no matter what is going on in the workplace. Okay, so kind of my thoughts on what you can do when to admonish versus to bear those wrongs patiently. Is it grave matter? Do you have authority to make the change? Will you be effective at the change? To admonish the sinner implies a call to repentance or reconciliation. Instructing the ignorant involves giving people a healthy sense of their Catholic identity or imagination. Jesus' instruction to turn the other cheek is radically different than what the world and our own sinful hearts want to do. We want, when we feel that when people hurt us in some way, we must return the favor. So that's something we have to reject. So these are the three criteria, I would say. I have 3 examples I would like to discuss in my experience. I noticed a coworker was working from home more than was allowed by our company. So in my mind, I'm like, well, okay, it's not grave. It's not the end of the world that he's working an extra day from home. I don't have any authority in the issue. I can't really make a change in that, and if I had said something to him, I don't think I would have been very effective at it. So I decided to bear the wrongs patiently. Okay. Humility without condemning, because I also didn't know everything that was going on. So I continued to help him. I would continue to be a good coworker. I continued to be kind to him. Him being a good teammate, later told me that the boss had made arrangements because he had to drive an hour to work every day. And he said that, and he told me, because I had been being kind to him, and I wasn't gonna kind of say anything to him. I was just gonna continue to do my work. He said, maybe you should ask her, because I've been doing it. So I did. I asked her, hey, can I, I noticed Jerry's been working from home, and I assumed it's because of the distance. Do you mind if I work from home those days too? She's like, absolutely. So because I didn't piss and moan and cause problems, and I didn't know everything either. I didn't know what was going on. I got to work from home, and I think she wants to actually make us more virtual too. So I kind of got a glimpse of something that was bigger at play than I initially thought. So that's a good example of bearing those wrongs and patiently still being kind, because you don't know everything. And how many times have we been in that situation too? I would challenge you to bear those wrongs and see what kind of outcomes come. This took about 2 weeks between when it started and when this actually started to happen, where I worked from home. Second situation, our company NPS team, the Net Promoter System, wanted to use a generic mission statement that included equitable, diverse, and inclusive. It wasn't a very great mission statement. It was pretty boring, and we hear it all the time from our diversity team, our DE&I team. But I was a part of the team, and this was a fairly grave situation, potentially scandalous for me and my faith. I did have authority because I was one of the key decision makers on the team, and I probably would have been effective judging that, to make a change, judging that situation. So I decided I would admonish and instruct in this situation, not specifically Catholic, but more kind of just admonish, instruct to make it more neutral. So I noticed that I was the only one on the team of 8 people that really had any kind of traditional values. Most of the people there were fairly diversity, DE&I situated, but nobody seemed to really care about the mission statement. So I picked up on that as well. So I took it upon myself to rewrite the mission statement, talking about professionalism, driving performance, promoting outstanding collaboration, those types of words, and took diversity, equity, inclusion off the table for our mission statement for our entire team. And everyone liked it. Everyone thought it was very well done, and didn't have a problem with the removal of it. I think that was a good part of this, because if they had kept those in, or if somebody was really adamant about leaving diversity, equity, inclusion there, I might have decided to leave the group. So that's a situation where I gave it a shot. I thought I might have been effective, and I was, and was able to preserve some of my consciousness around my faith. when to admonish, example 3, I was a project manager and I was on the DE&I team. I had no choice. I had to be on the team. And we were responsible for 500 people in the org. This was when I was seriously considered leaving the company, because I could not find myself to live with promoting things that were inherently against my faith. This would have been grave if I was silent or passive. I didn't have much authority in this situation, and I could have possibly been effective if I did something differently. So I decided, rather than risk my job over D&I decided to bear wrongs patiently and admonish and instruct, kind of a combination throughout that year. So I decided to cover topics to avoid topics that were against my faith, while promoting topics that promoted the Catholic religion. So I added the Catholic holidays to the DE&I calendar. I wrote about the Catholic origins of Easter and Christmas. Catholic, not Christian, just Catholic. I wrote a full thing about our Catholic holidays. And I avoided and removed myself from posts around Pride Month and related content. So that was my way of doing that at a big company. I was forced against my will, but I decided that was the best decision given my role as a father to provide, and didn't have any alternatives to that. Touching on religious freedom, we live in a country where we have the First Amendment. We should know that God's law comes before any written law from man. Although our written laws should reflect God's law, they oftentimes do not. But Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peacefully assemble, and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So that's what the First Amendment says. We have conscious exemptions against any vaccinations that have fetal tissue from abortions. We should be able to get exemptions from any initiatives that in our country for those related issues. Secular employees are legally obligated to accommodate employees' religious observances and practices. So you can have sacramentals in the workplace, and you should be able to observe the holy days of obligation. There's a line with evangelization, so you really need to be aware of that. Otherwise, it could be a legal issue. And just remember, God's law is above any law, such as separation of church and state. We really want to chip away at the culture there. So we can do that in our corporations, as an employee, as an hourly employee, or as a business owner, or anywhere in between, middle management. Again, I'm middle management in a big company. I'm 3 layers up, but there's 9 layers above me. And we're just a small little speck in the greater scheme of things. But God likes that. God likes you to give that up to Him, and He'll use you to chip away at the culture. So that's what we're here to do, by excelling in virtue and grace. Follow and be well informed of God's law. Fulfill your God-given role as a provider. Be the top performer in your company. Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Understand and avoid company initiatives that derail or scandalize the faith. Seek reconciliation if needed. Follow legitimate company policies and authority in the workplace. Find opportunities to share your faith. Stand up for your faith, and bear your wrongs patiently. And that's my presentation.